The Bible predicts mass animal die-offs. Hosea 4 verse 3 says, "Therefore the land will mourn, and everyone who dwells there will waste away with the beasts of the field and the birds of the air. Even the fish of the sea will be taken away."
Well, we started smelling something and started looking around.
Neighbors in Port Charlotte's South Gulf Cove community are dealing with a dead fish mystery. Last week, the fish started turning up, floating among plant life near the edge of canals. The county tells NBC2's Claire Lavazorio it has a couple of theories, but the people stuck smelling it are searching for answers.
We had no idea why there were so many dead fish floating in the canal.
The Bentley family's backyard, right on the South Gulf Cove canal system, is now a graveyard of dead fish.
So what could it be? Is it man-made? It's too much to be just somebody's fertilizer running into the canal.
The homeowners and their neighbors are dealing with a dilemma that's leaving behind a terrible smell and fish of all sizes.
It is sad. It is sad, and it destroys the ecology of the area.
Most of the time, you can't see them, but they are there, underwater in our streams and rivers. We're talking about freshwater mussels.
This is a mussel that can live to more than 100 years.
And conservation biologist Emily Blevins has been tracking them for the last 5 years.
Freshwater mussels are critical to our freshwater ecosystems.
That's because the creatures act like a natural filter, cleaning contaminants out of the water.
Including things like E. coli, flame retardants, pharmaceuticals, things that you wouldn't want to end up in your drinking water.
But over the last few years, biologists, including Blevins, have been tracking a mysterious die-off of the mussels, both on the East Coast and here in the Pacific Northwest.
Mussel beds exist for hundreds of years and can have thousands and thousands of animals in a bed. And so when they die really suddenly, that's usually a sign that something has really gone wrong.
And at this point, nobody knows exactly what's causing the die-offs, but they are scrambling to find out.
Freshwater mussels are considered kind of those canaries in the coal mine that tell you when something is wrong.
These are the most imperiled species in North America.
Travis Williams is executive director of Willamette Riverkeeper. He and a team of volunteers have been monitoring mussel beds in the Willamette as well. A few years back, he too noticed a problem in a stretch of river near Corvallis.
There was basically no reproduction happening within that bed, or a couple of beds of 40,000 mussels.
Some preliminary research points to disease as a possible cause for the die-offs, but experts say it's likely a combination of pollution, warmer water temperatures, and changes in river flows. The push now is to find out how to stop this troubling trend and save this critical species.
The Bible predicts natural disasters, and there will be famines, pestilences and earthquakes in various places, according to Matthew chapter 24 verse 7.
Some breaking news right now. 4.0 earthquake has hit the coast off of Southern California, shaking both LA and Ventura counties. Omar Lewis tracking the latest for us at our live desk right now. Omar, what's going on here?
We can tell you that magnitude 4.0 magnitude quake sent a jolt through Ventura County and across the west side San Fernando Valley in Southern California. We want to share a map with you here this morning showing you where this happened. The U.S. Geological Survey says the quake began at 2:13 a.m. Pacific time, of course, centered in the Pacific Ocean about 19 miles south of Oxnard in Ventura County. But people in Los Angeles County felt this as well. People in these impacted areas described light shaking as the earthquake happened. So far, there have been no reports of any injuries or any damage, but we can also tell you this morning that magnitude 4 quake, it came 3 hours after a magnitude 3.9 earthquake ruptured near San Jose, California.
So the U.S. Geological Service is reporting a 5.8 earthquake. It happened in the state of Oaxaca. That's in the southern part of the country. The earthquake struck around 8:40 our time. There are not any reports of any major damage or injuries at this point. Of course, we'll continue following this breaking news and bring you any updates as they become available.
జపాన్ దేశంలోని తూర్పు తీరంలో భూకంపం సంభవించింది. జపాన్ దేశంలోని హసాకి పట్టణంలో నిన్న సాయంత్రం సంభవించిన భూకంపం రిక్టర్ స్కేల్పై 5.6గా నమోదైందని యునైటెడ్ స్టేట్స్ జియోలాజికల్ సర్వే వెల్లడించింది. జపాన్ తూర్పు తీరంలోని హసాకి పట్టణంలో 32 కిలోమీటర్ల లోతులో భూమి కంపించిందని యునైటెడ్ స్టేట్ జియోలాజికల్ సర్వే అధికారులు చెప్పారు. ఈ భూ ప్రకంపనలతో జనం వణికిపోయారు. ఇళ్లలో నుంచి ప్రజలు బయటకు పరుగులు పెట్టారు. ఈ భూకంపం వల్ల ఎంతమంది మరణించారు, ఎంత ఆస్తి నష్టం సంభవించిందో కూడా ఇంకా తెలియరాలేదు.
En hy kom vir ons.
Oh, hy kom hierdie kant toe, my man. Oh, my man. Julle liewe Jesus, asseblief. Asseblief, mis ons, asseblief.
Hoor julle moet ons ry. Waar jy ry nou, jy het halfbal.
Okay, net stil, rustig, kom ons kyk net. Waar's Mila?
Ons ek in die kasie ergens. Daar die bo. Is dit dan? Okay, nee, hy gaan weg. Daar gaan jou boom. Okay, nee, hy gaan weg, julle. O, jette, ek het in die bome saam.
Okay, kom ons kyk net.
Hoorie, maar kom 'n plastic nie op maar.
Maak asseblief die kamer deur toe.
Kamer deur?
Ja, vir as iets gebeur. Hy moet net hier bly.
Hoorie, ek kan nie dink jy ry kyk daai kant toe hardloop. Moet met my lewe dinge gaan dood sien.
As hy slaat ons. Hy slaat ons, hy slaat ons. Hy hard op deur die lokasie. Hy slaat ons, dit is kwaai hierso. Hy slaat ons, kyk hier. Hy hardloop. Kyk op. Hy hardloop ons, dis vra stadig asseblief.
Now to Australia, where they're facing those massive fires, already among the worst in that country's history, with more than 12 million acres scorched. And officials are warning the next few days will be even worse. Maggie Ruley is there in New South Wales, Australia for us this morning with the latest. Good morning, Maggie.
Robin, the family who lives here tells me they have been battling back these flames for the past 2 weeks, getting as little as a couple hours of sleep every night. People here are exhausted, and unfortunately it looks like things are just going to get worse. This morning, a mass evacuation underway as thousands flee their homes, escaping an apocalyptic sight in Australia. The massive bushfires now visible from space, engulfing the size of more than 50 New York cities.
But not like this.
What's different?
The blackness, the darkness, the intensity of it. It's like a apocalypse. It's like something that you've never experienced before.
The blazes, a near constant threat for months. With these winds starting to pick up, you can see just how dangerous these hot spots are, how quickly they can spread. We've been here for minutes and already it is rapidly spreading down the hill. Oh no! Some people deciding to stay behind to protect their homes. In this dramatic video, a woman using only a garden hose fights back flames. This man and his family were on vacation when the fire closed in on them.
We're actually fleeing for our lives.
A local hero rushing them to safety on his boat. The Australian Navy bringing in supplies and aid, rescuing families trapped off the coast. Firefighters battling the flames from the sky. Water dropping aircraft overhead pretty much non-stop. Trying to stay ahead of these fires as conditions are expected to get even worse this weekend.
Tomorrow's D-Day.
And with conditions worsening, the U.S. Embassy has warned all American tourists inside the fire zone to get out immediately.
Mohammed Rusti has lived his whole life in this street, but he hasn't seen floods like this in years.
I panicked at first as the water started coming in, but we're so used to it. We knew what to do. We moved everything upstairs.
Tens of thousands in Jakarta aren't so lucky. They've been forced out of their homes by the flooding. Entire streets in Jakarta have been submerged, forcing residents to use boats or swim to get around.
In our area, there are about 4 villages which are flooded.
The water level began rising before dawn yesterday as relentless rains bucketed down over New Year. Cars were washed away, streets turned into rivers, leaving tens of thousands of people stranded.
Our focus is on rescuing residents. All officers are on duty today.
Jakarta's domestic airport was closed because the runway was more suited to boats than planes. The disaster has already claimed multiple lives. This mother is mourning her 16-year-old son, electrocuted as he climbed a power pole to escape the floods.
I didn't know what happened until his younger brother came and told me.
To prevent further deaths, the state power company switched off the electricity in more than 700 districts. Ageing infrastructure and a woeful drainage system only exacerbate the problem. These are the deadliest floods in at least 7 years, and the forecast is for more rain to come. It's disasters like these that have driven the government's plan to relocate the capital from Jakarta to Kalimantan as soon as possible. Ann Barker, ABC News, Jakarta.
The Bible predicts wars. According to Matthew 24 verse 7, the Bible says, "For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom."
Breaking news from the Middle East, where a U.S. drone strike killed one of Iran's most powerful military leaders overnight. The targeted killing of Major General Qasem Soleimani inside Iraq is a dramatic escalation in the confrontation between the U.S. and Iran. Video, apparently from the aftermath, shows burning wreckage near Baghdad's airport. Soleimani led the powerful Quds force of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards, blamed for killing hundreds of American troops. Iran vows a harsh response. Iran's supreme leader tweeted, quote, "Severe revenge awaits the criminals who carried out the strike."
This drone strike signals a new U.S. military approach to Iranian threats. Yesterday, a statement by President Trump's Defense Secretary Mark Esper seemed to foreshadow the attack. He said, quote, "We will take preemptive action as well to protect American forces, to protect American lives. The game has changed," end quote. We have a team of correspondents in the Middle East and at home covering every major angle, including Iran's potential military response, the White House strategy, and the growing controversy in Congress. And we're going to begin with David Martin at the Pentagon for us. David, good morning. So what's at stake here?
Well, this opens a dangerous new chapter in the long-running confrontation between the U.S. and Iran. The drone strike eliminated a key enemy, but it could also put Americans throughout the Middle East at greater risk. Iran state television confirmed General Qasem Soleimani's death overnight. A deputy commander of Iranian-backed militias, Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, a close advisor to Soleimani, who was sanctioned by the U.S. for violence against Americans, was also killed. Unverified video from the scene near Baghdad International Airport shows the wreckage of two vehicles. President Trump authorized the Thursday airstrike as part of his maximum pressure campaign, which has intensified in recent months. In a statement, the Pentagon blamed Soleimani for the deaths of hundreds of American service members, writing, "He was actively developing plans to attack American diplomats and service members in Iraq and throughout the region." The U.S. blames Soleimani for orchestrating the rocket attack on an Iraqi military base that killed an American contractor last month, and for approving the attack on the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad earlier this week. Retired General David Petraeus, who commanded American forces during the war in Iraq, called Soleimani our most significant and evil adversary in the greater Middle East. Seen as a terrorist in the U.S., Soleimani was respected in Iran and tried to reshape its influence in the region. He had the backing of Iran's supreme leader and was the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's Quds Force, a U.S.-designated terrorist organization that armed and trained Iraqi Shiite militias responsible for killing U.S. troops.
Enough is enough.
Earlier in the day, Defense Secretary Mark Esper said Iran may be planning new attacks against the U.S. and that the game has changed.
This is part of Iran's malign behavior that they've been spreading across the region from Africa all the way through the Middle East into Afghanistan now for 40 years. And it's this type of bad behavior that simply needs to end.
President Trump warned earlier this week Iran would pay a price, but he did not want war.
I don't think that would be a good idea for Iran. It wouldn't last very long. Do I want to? No. I want to have peace. I like peace.
Thank you, Mr. President. The killing of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Quds Force leader Qasem Soleimani needed to happen, and President Donald Trump was the man to do it. Everyone knew the blood of Americans was on his hands, responsible for the murder of more than 600 American service members and thousands of others whose blood and limbs were spilled and left on the sands of the Middle East. He implemented the explosive devices capable of piercing through our American armor. His ruthless reign of terror, both celebrated and legendary against Americans, our allies, and Muslims, would have continued had this monster not been stopped. The president did not risk a single life in his effort to eliminate this sadistic beast who, according to all reports, as well as his history, was a clear and present danger to America. Folks, you know the president means what he says and says what he means. He is not interested in war. He is interested in America and protecting it. And in so doing, he will take swift, decisive, and strategic action and take no prisoners along the way. And whether they'll admit it or not, all Americans should be thankful. Our allies should be thankful. Indeed, the world should be thankful for the removal of the world's most dangerous terrorist. Folks, this day has been 40 years in the making. I told you last year that Iran was determined to provoke us, and indeed was provoking us. And to all those who criticize the president for not trying diplomacy, a primer. This president has repeatedly tried diplomacy, stepped back, talked about restraint, and refused to take action when ironically criticized for not doing so. Take a listen. In the last month, as Iran has reacted to the economic stranglehold under which it is suffering because of the sanctions President Trump has put on it, a far cry, by the way, from the rollover reward of $150 billion Obama gave them and gave that regime, which was used to fund terrorism throughout the world, Iran is responding with extreme provocation, hitting oil tankers. When an American drone, however, with a wingspan as wide as a 737, was brought down by an Iranian missile, it seemed that Iran was determined to provoke us. The president was ready to conduct strikes, but pulled back because, as he said,
they shot down an unmanned drone, plane, whatever you want to call it, and here we are sitting with 150 dead people, and I didn't like it. I didn't think it was proportionate.
And in the last 2 weeks, Iran has been responsible for an attack on a U.S. embassy in Iraq where an American was killed. Remind you of Benghazi? The parallels are frightening. Soleimani actually helped plan the Benghazi attack, where 4 Americans were killed, and our last president never bothered to respond, while he and his gang of apologists said the massacre of Americans was due to a video. Here, this President Trump took swift and precise action. His response, where an American was killed, was immediate. Yes, indeed. The days of appeasement are over. Gone are the days when the U.S. feats Iran, brings her to the table to give her $150 billion and an additional $400 million on pallets flown in unmarked planes, as the United States lets out the Gitmo detainees to return to the battlefield.
China, Iran, and Russia kicking off 4 days of joint naval war games in the Gulf of Oman and the Indian Ocean, as Tehran looks to improve military ties with Beijing and Moscow amid heightened tensions with the United States. Waleed Faris is a Fox News national security and foreign affairs analyst. Waleed, thank you for joining us on this topic. How concerned should the United States be about this effort made between these three countries, certainly not our allies?
You know, these developments are important because they allow us and our public to understand what's the situation, the real situation with Iran. Often we have friends and allies in the region and beyond who are putting pressure on us. You need to do more on Iran, more in Iraq, more in Lebanon. The reality is that this joint exercise between Russia, China, and Iran is a message that these two powers, nuclear powers, are telling the United States and our allies that we're not, quote, going to let Iran down if you do anything against it. So the calculations now for the United States is to take into consideration that we're not just dealing with Iran, but also with an axis, a larger alliance, including those powers.
In our current news cycle, we hear a lot about Iran and Russia working together, particularly when it comes to Syria, and I definitely want to touch on that point in a moment. But first, just weaving China back into this whole discussion regarding this, the Chinese Defense Ministry said this about these naval drills, that it would deepen exchange and cooperation between the navies of the three countries. Of course, this is a very important area, very close to the Strait of Hormuz, of course, a major area for getting oil tankers from place to place from Iran. So what does China's involvement mean for all of this?
Well, look, China and Russia, but China made the statement, is telling us that we're not going to allow you to seize and control this area and isolate Iran. This is very serious. That statement is very serious. And it could be also that they are willing, China and Russia, that is, to send some of their parts of their fleets or ships into that area, which would complicate things. But this reminds me of something else. Our problem with Korea is very parallel. I mean, we think that we are only dealing with Korea. In fact, China and Russia are backing Korea. So it's much more of an international coalition business that we're dealing with now.
And shifting to Syria, as promised, we know that Russia and the Assad regime are working together. At this point in time, it's created really a humanitarian crisis. There have been renewed airstrikes. And the aim is to get this northern part of Syria that is still considered a rebel stronghold for the Assad regime to regain this ground. Now, the president has issued essentially a warning. President Trump tweeting this: Russia, Syria, and Iran are killing or on their way to killing thousands of innocent civilians in the Idlib province. Don't do it. Turkey is working hard to stop the carnage.
Russia has introduced a new missile system that could be impossible to defend against. The first regiment of avant-garde hypersonic missiles are now in service, and according to President Vladimir Putin, they can travel more than 20 times the speed of sound. Dominic Velitis is covering this story for us in London. Dominic, what more can you tell us about these new weapons?
Well, Jennifer, they were first unveiled back in 2018 by Russia's President Vladimir Putin. Indeed, he used his annual State of the Nation address that year to make the announcement. They are very fast. We're told, as you say, they can travel at 20 times the speed of sound. They can be mounted on top of an ICBM and can carry nuclear weapons of up to 2 megatons. But that's just part of the story, Jennifer. As well as being able to travel at incredible speeds, the avant-garde so-called glide system means it's also highly maneuverable. It can make sharp turns and take unpredictable courses on the way to its target, making it more difficult to intercept. And this is perhaps its big selling point and the quality that makes it really quite worrying. In effect, it is a new kind of intercontinental missile system that at the very least is difficult to defend against. Indeed, when it was unveiled last year, Putin boasted that the avant-garde was invulnerable to not only existing missile defense systems, but potentially future ones as well. Although I should stress, some experts here in the West have cast doubt on that claim. Jennifer.
So, Dominic, as you know, this is being called a game changer. Where does this leave other countries?
Well, certainly the United States and China have hypersonic missile programs of their own. China claims to have already tested such a weapon. But if the Russians' avant-garde is indeed in service, as they claim, It would put them well ahead in terms of current missile technology, and Moscow's announcement today comes at a time when Cold War arms control agreements between East and West are pretty much collapsing. Take the New START agreement as one crucial example. It is due to expire in February 2021. Russia appears willing to extend it, but the current US administration seems skeptical.
The Bible predicts the Antichrist before the second coming of Christ. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 3-4 says, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sits in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God."
Deus, qui salutis aeterne beate Mariae, virginitate fecunda, humano generi premia pre. En un mundo dividido y fragmentado, quiero invitar a la reconciliación y a la fraternidad entre todos los creyentes y también entre todas las personas de buena voluntad. Nuestra fe nos lleva a difundir los valores de la paz, de la convivencia, del bien común. Recemos para que los cristianos, los que siguen otras religiones y las personas de buena voluntad promuevan juntamente la paz, la justicia en el mundo. Gracias.
Pope Francis has apologised for smacking a woman's hand after she grabbed him in St Peter's Square. The pontiff confessed to losing his patience with the woman who grabbed his hand and pulled him towards her while he was admiring the Vatican's nativity scene.